The world is moving forward, technology is advancing, information is everywhere, and people have access to knowledge more than ever before. And yet somehow, some arguments are still stuck in the past, where you are not supposed to question them closely. One of those arguments is called mathematical miracle in the Quran. I know. Allah, who couldn't even figure out the very basic of mathematics in the family, put together Quran with like so-called mathematical miracle. Anyway, we are not focusing on the knowledge of Allah at this stage. We are just going to focus on the knowledge of the Muslim missionaries, how they are bringing this argument back. So Adnan Rashid, known as Muslim missionary, wants to, again, rebirth this argument. Sounds strange, but it looks like some people think this is impressive. So let's watch together.
There is something else mathematical, which is, I mean, I'm gonna mention this passingly. The largest chapter of the Quran is chapter 2. It consists of 286 verses. So the middle verse of the largest chapter of the Quran is 143. It would be 143. And if you read the middle verse of the largest chapter of the Quran, you will see this simply cannot be an accident, right? If you read it, verse 143, it states something fascinating.
Oh, so this is obviously in English, and there's a footnote. I'm reading it from Abdul Halim's translation, which is usually seen as one of the better translations for sure.
Yeah.
So we have made you believers into a just community. There's a footnote B saying literally a middle nation.
Yes.
Some take to mean moderate, so that you may hear, so you may bear witness to the truth before others, and so that the messenger may bear witness to it before you. So I think I know where you're going with this, but yeah, a just community or a middle nation.
You see, the Arabic word is more telling, right? It says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim wa kadhalika ja'alnakum ummatan wasata." Ummatan wasata. We have made you a middle nation. A middle nation. The Arabic word the Arabic word wasat, it means literally in the middle, right in the middle. Okay, neither right nor left. You are actually in the middle, right? So this is the largest chapter of the Quran, and the middle verse is 143. And what does it say? That we have made you a middle nation. So this again, it's an indicator to basically some kind of mathematical coding of the Quran when it comes to verses on this side and on that side.
So those of us who walk around with the brain, we kind of look at this and listen and then just like, yeah, this is terrible argument. But some people think this is very convincing. So I'll call that as the illusion of certainty. So what we have here, the entire argument depends on one hidden assumption, right? That the Quran has one version and that perfectly fits with the verse numbering system. That's the whole argument depends on. The problem is, that's not the case. Within Islamic tradition itself, there are lots of different Arabic Qurans. Some people name them riwayat, some people name them qiraat, but there is not one, there is multiple. There are teachings talking about 10 to 14, of course, times 2 as recognized different Arabic Qurans with different names. Like you've got Ibn Kathir, you've got Hisham, you've got Ibn Dakwan, you've got Warsh, you've got Hafs. And here's the problem. This so-called miracle can work if there is only one version of that Quran, and that Quran was Hafs. In Hafs, Surah 2 has 286 verses. So they point to verse 143 as the middle. But switch that to another different Arabic Quran, such as Warsh Quran, right? The moment you switch from Hafs Quran to Warsh Quran, you have to switch the verse numbers too. What is in Hafs as Surah 2 verse 143? In Warsh is Surah 2 verse 142. So number of the verse is different. And once you make that change, that so-called middle verse is no longer the one you are talking about as middle nation. You've got other Qurans, right? If you try to force the same midpoint logic, you land around what would be correspond with Surah 2 verse 144 in Hafs. So you've got minimum of 7 different Arabic Qur'ans that won't give you this so-called miracle middle nation. Hisham Quran wouldn't give that to you. Warsh Quran wouldn't give that to you. Ibn Dakwan wouldn't give you that. Minimum 7 Qurans wouldn't give you that miracle. When we look at the other Qurans, what we get? Just nothing. How Allah wants to please his pervert prophet. No middle nation, no miracle at all. Just a God who's so concerned for the feelings of pervert. So the entire argument only works if you cherry pick one version of the Quran among others and ignore, not only you are cherry picking, but you are also ignoring all others. And you know what? That is not miracle at all. That is selection bias. And another thing to remember, this midpoint itself is all artificial. Why is verse 143 is in the middle? Because 286 divided by 2 equals to 143. But verse numbers were not revealed. They were edited later as they try to organize the text, right? You look at early manuscripts. What you've got? First, you've got the division of the surahs, and then you've got 10 verses divisions, and then you've got 5 verse division, and then as the time goes on, verse by verse steps in. So what you are calling miracle is actually based on later additional system. And that is done by the hand of human. That is done by the hand of human, who turns out to be a little bit clever and more organized than Allah, right? As well as your prophet. If I number paragraphs in a book, centuries later it is written, then find something interesting in the middle paragraph, I haven't discovered divine design. What I discovered is, I just created amazing illusion. That's what it is. There is a deeper problem. This is just numerology, right? Pick a structure, pick a number system, find a midpoint, assign meaning. You can do this with almost any large text, right? If there is real miracle, that simply wouldn't fall apart the moment you switch the readings, the moment you switch the verse divisions, or questioning the later numbering system. And this one simply collapses immediately, right? Think about it. This argument is like no argument at all. This is not the argument Allah uses Quran to be divine. It is such a strange thing to observe that Muslim missionaries claim to know much better than Allah. I find that heartbreaking, but seems that is the reality. They are coming up with things that Allah didn't even think about it. Here's another thing, you can go further, right? Ignore everything I said and pretend that there is one perfect Quran came down from Allah with the verse numbers and there is no alternative option. There is one perfect Quran with the perfect verse numbers. Even if it is that the case, still you have to ignore and discredit Islamic tradition, right? Because Islamic tradition itself tells us that there were concerns about the missing Quranic verses, right? Some people lost the Quran, ship comes and then eats the Quran, people are dying in the battle, they are taking the Quran with them, Quran is being forgotten, lost, and not being preserved, even with the people in their memory, right? So, if even sake of the argument there is only one perfect Quran in current form as Hafs, then you have to say no to the Islamic tradition once for all. So even on its own terms, you are being asked to believe a perfect numerical structure built on transmission history that isn't nearly as neat as argument itself requires, right? And yet, even if we grant that all, this miracle still fails the moment you compare actual readings that's circulating today, like Hafs and Warsh, I put that together, right? So no, this is not divine design at all. It is simply selective maths, flexible definitions, and conclusion that is looking for moral support as well as emotional support, right? But here's the thing, I am very generous woman. And I love to be very generous and kind to Muslims, and then I want to help them out, okay? If you are gonna force a numerical miracle to the Quran, and then if you want to chase that up, so here how to do it. Remember a couple of years ago, someone else brought up back to life another mathematical miracle argument of 19, right? Let's focus on miracle of number 19, right? So bring your attention to Surah 19 and verse 19. 19. There Jesus, Isa, as described as sinless. So if numbers are supposed to guide you to something meaningful, then don't stop at where it conveniently selective midpoint thing. Follow the text where it actually leads you. A sinless man, Surah 19, verse 19. And that raises real question, right? Not on asking like, oh, mid-nation, oh, middle nation, oh, midpoint, all those, no. It raises serious question, Surah 19, verse 19. Why is Jesus singled out like that as sinless? Not Muhammad, not anyone, but Jesus. So instead of building your faith on fragile numerical pattern that collapse under just even without microscope, right? Why don't you focus on and bring your attention to what actually stands out? If you are looking for something real, if you are looking for something solid, don't chase those numbers. Look at the one the text itself sets apart, right? In Surah 19, verse 19. Look at Jesus. With Jesus, you know what? With Jesus, you don't need middle point. You don't need middle nation. You don't need middle road. You don't need middleman. Because Jesus is sufficient enough. That is the miracle of the Quran, I think. And all you need to do from now on, put your heart, put your mind, put your faith in Him alone. The one Surah 19 verse 19 identifies as sinless. Of course, you want to get to know that real one, right? For that, turn your heart, turn your eyes, turn your brain to the Christian scripture. You will get to meet with real Jesus. Sinless, perfect, God-man stepped into the world and then gave himself for you. With his death and his resurrection, you are declared righteous. You don't need any middleman. You don't need any middle point. You don't need any middle nation. Because Jesus Christ is sufficient enough. That is the miracle of the Quran, right?